Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. On this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And of course the most important event is the interview between Tucker-Carlson and Putin himself. Putin told us a lot of very interesting things. Let's say the West has begun to recognize the impossibility of the Russia's strategic defeat. Let him think about what to do next. We are ready for dialogue. Putin told Tucker-Carlson, NATO can adequately recognize Russia's control over new areas and their options if there is a desire, Putin said. You need to understand one important thing. When Putin was talking about strategic defeat, he was not talking about strategic defeat on the ground. He was not talking about the clashes, defeat, let's say, the possibilities of Ukrainians to penetrate the Russians' defense belt somewhere in Zaporozhye area. When talking about strategic defeat, Putin, first of all, was talking about society, about Russian society, about people, about civilians, about those who every day goes at work, making money, engineers, teachers, let's say, doctors and police officers, businessmen. He was talking about them because for NATO and the Western countries, strategic defeat is not the defeat of Russians on the ground because it's impossible. Russia is a nuclear weapon country. The Western countries were trying to make strikes to blow the Russia from inside, to force the Russia to fall into parts or something like this. And according to information, according to the results, according to the Russian economic growth, we see that the Western countries haven't managed to achieve the Russia's strategic defeat. But when talking about Ukraine, there are a completely different situation because, for example, he told us also that he wanted to reach a solution to the situation in Ukraine through negotiations. Russia and Ukraine will come to an agreement sooner or later. That means that very likely that Russia has already achieved Ukraine's strategic defeat because the processes that currently taking place in Ukraine are very difficult, very complicated and very terrible. And first of all, we're talking about mobilization process. Ukraine has already adopted the mobilization law, and this is exactly what the Western countries wanted to achieve: strategic defeat and the strikes in society. Ukraine is about to enter the same story: strategic defeat and the strikes among society, among people who basically doesn't want to go on war and to die for someone's interest. Putin talked a lot, and there was a very interesting interview. And the most important probably thing, one of the important things he talked about is according to Putin, what territories he considers as the territory of Russia, of historical Russian territories. And he told Tucker-Carlson that Ukraine, every single region, every single part of Ukraine that locates on the left bank of Dnieper River is the historically Russian territories. So Putin, according to that interview, was talking that Kiev area, that Poltava area, that Zaporozhye area, that Kharkiv, Donetsk, Lugansk, Sumy, Chernigov is historically Russian territories. And by that he was trying to say that if Zelensky is not going to start negotiation process with him, sooner or later the Russians will be able to restore control or to establish control over every single square meter of historically Russian territory. So we'll see what is going to be next, but all these things first of all tell us that very likely this year this special military operation will be ended in Russian favor. From interesting updates, of course, from the Western countries, a lot of sources, a lot of media reported a lot of interesting updates about that interview. And the Newsweek, for example, reported that Tucker-Carlson could be charged with the espionage in the US for the interview with Vladimir Putin. So we see that the Western countries, Western media is crazy about this interview. So we'll see what is going to be next. Now we are moving to Ukraine once again. As we discussed, Zelensky dismissed Zaluzhny and he also prepared a very big speech. I expected something else because Zelensky knew about upcoming interview with Putin, and I expected a little bit different actions from Ukraine. Maybe they would try to attack Crimean Bridge or to make another media attack, but probably they realized that they had no chances to do anything, to conduct anything, so that's why they just took decision to dismiss Zaluzhny, and they tried to change focus of media, let's say, activity of media noise in their favor. I'm not sure whether it helped them or not, but we will not judge this situation. The only thing we can say is that Zaluzhny was replaced by Syrsky. We have adjusted the map. Currently, Syrsky is from now on commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. Zaluzhny was deleted from map, and obviously he went to history. Interesting things are coming from the situation on the ground as well. According to information we have during the previous night, the parties, either Ukrainians and the Russians, complete the exchange process. 100 Russian soldiers returned back to Russia and 100 Ukrainian soldiers returned back to Ukraine. Interesting details are coming from Kreminna Forest. This night, the sources, either the Russians and the Ukrainians, these days published two different videos. This video shows us the Russian attack in direction of Ukrainian positions to the west of Dibrova. The Russians were using significant number of armored vehicles. If we return back, if we slow down this video, we're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 armored vehicles and personal carriers and tanks we got on this scene. We're heading in direction of Ukraine positions to the west of Dibrova. Obviously, there were more tanks. Currently, we don't know for sure how that attack finished. Very likely the Russians managed to improve their positions, but there is a very important thing that you need to pay attention to. The Russian tactics is changing, and we see that when talking about, let's say, 4 months ago, usually the Russians were using like 1 tank and 2 personal carriers and something like this. This was like attacks with the small groups. And starting of October and November, the Russians increased the number of forces involved in this or that attack, and now they start using from 5 till 10 armored vehicles, even maybe more, to attack this or that Ukraine positions. We saw significant convoys of Russian forces in the vicinity of to the south of Novomikhailivka, lots of armored vehicles in Avdiivka area. So the Russians are using a little bit more powerful attacks with bigger number of armored vehicles in comparison with the Ukrainians. Very interesting post was published in X social network from the Ukrainian side, from Ukrainian Geolo Centers. Those days, the Ukrainian Azov brigade published video in YouTube of their offensive operation. Currently, it's very difficult to say when exactly that attack took place. Maybe that was last year attack, but anyway, according to that attack, the Ukrainians conducted a successful counter-offensive operation from Kreminna Forest, from Seversky Donetsk direction, in the Seversky Donetsk river direction, area to Kreminna, and as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainians managed to establish control over some positions and trenches. So we need more details, information about that attack, but according to geolocations, that attack was pretty successful, and as a result of that offensive operation, that probably and very likely, not very likely, that may took place maybe even a few months ago or even last year, the Ukrainians established control over this territory, and basically they ruined the Russian plans to storm Bilogorovka from the north, because from this perspective, from this configuration, the Russians lost one of the roads to attack, because we know that currently the Russians are trying to storm Bilogorovka from the filtration station. Now we are moving to Avdiivka area. We have also lots of very interesting updates, and now we got the final confirmation of the Russian presence in the central part. To be more precise, not the presence, but the video of improvements of Russian positions. And this video was published by the 110th Mechanized Brigade of Ukraine Armed Forces. On this video, we see how the Russian troopers and infantry were moving through the forest, through the northern part in direction of the chemical plant. So, according to that geolocation, the Russians were moving something like this. And they were heading in this area. So this video confirms the Russian progress, and we will adjust the map due to the geolocation, and we will show this territory under complete Russian control, because we have geolocation of that. We will make an additional post and so on. So when talking about the situation on the ground, the Russians, according to unconfirmed reports and confirmed, let's say, updates, the Russians continue offensive operation in direction of the chemical plant from the south. The Russians continue their movements streets in direction of the bus station, but there are very heavy clashes, and yet the Russians haven't managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt. There is a very powerful stronghold in this area. Also, the Russians continue movements along the main streets in direction of the southern part, and according to information we have, now the Russians are having very heavy fightings with Ukrainians along Frunze line. So you might see different titles of the streets because the Ukrainians changed the streets, names of the streets, so it's very difficult for now to understand which numbers and titles to stick. When talking about the eastern part, according to information we have, the Ukrainians took a decision to withdraw their positions further from the another additional, let's say, garden association, and now they're moving to the central part. So which means that if this information will be confirmed, that means that Ukrainians probably will be forced to step back from this stronghold as well, or the Russians will establish control and encircle this territory. So something like this. So I believe that today or tomorrow we're going to receive updates about exactly this triangle and this square. When talking about other directions, we haven't received almost anything. The silence continue coming from Novomikhailivka. We have adjusted the map, fifth day in a row without any updates from the village. We haven't received anything from Novoprokopovka, Rabotina area. Few updates we received from Kherson direction, few more geolocations from the Ukrainian side, few more videos, and very likely that some of them took place not in the original Ukrainian bridgehead, but somewhere to the south in direction of additional foothold that very likely the Ukrainians managed to establish during the previous days and weeks of clashes. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.